Hi everyone, thank you for being here today. My name is Laura Mena, and alongside Ariel Gold, Benjamin Mizrahi, and Wolfgang Siqueiros, we'll be presenting our Capstone project, Impact EDU, a theory-driven mentorship model for building teacher competence. Today we're going to be walking through the problem that motivated this project, the theoretical foundations, and how we designed and implemented this program, and also what we learned from the results. So, before explaining the program itself, I want to clarify how we're defining executive function in this project. So, executive function is typically discussed as a student skill, things like organization, attention, or self regulation. But in Impact EDU, we reframed executive function as a core teacher competency. What that means is we're looking at the cognitive skills teachers rely on every day, especially in planning instruction, organizing classroom systems, maintaining instructional clarity, and regulating decisions and responses in real time. And these skills are especially critical for novice educators who are still developing routines and professional judgment while also managing the full complexity of teaching. So you might say a new teacher isn't just delivering content, but they're also planning ahead, monitoring student understanding, adjusting pacing, and managing classroom dynamics all at once. So instead of treating executive function as something teachers only teach students, we positioned it as something teachers themselves develop. So this also connects to our grounding in communities of practice because teacher competence doesn't develop in isolation. It develops through guided collaboration and shared reflection, which is what COP does. So, this slide really introduces the central idea of Impact EDU, which is executive function becomes both a teacher skill and a framework for professional learning.
Teaching requires managing multiple goals at once, delivering instruction, monitoring behavior, adapting lessons, responding to questions, and maintaining pacing all simultaneously. And these aren't just instructional skills, they're executive functioning demands. And this is something I personally understand. About 8 years ago, I myself was a novice teacher, and I remember feeling cognitively overwhelmed, trying to keep track of lesson objectives while managing those classroom behaviors and adjusting instruction in real time. It often felt like I was spinning multiple plates at once. As someone who also lives with ADHD, I've had to intentionally develop my own executive functioning skills, particularly around planning, organization, and self regulation. And that experience made me especially aware of how invisible, yet demanding, these cognitive processes are in teaching. Many early career teachers are not struggling because they lack content knowledge. They're struggling because the cognitive load of teaching is enormous. Executive function aligned professional learning offers structured support for those cognitive demands. Impact EDU was designed to respond to this need by combining mentorship, collaboration, and executive function focused professional development to support teachers in strengthening the very cognitive systems that sustain effective instruction.
Impact EDU uses three frameworks, each addressing a different aspect of teacher development. We use executive function, the cognitive foundation, which includes planning, organization, working memory, cognitive flexibility, and self regulation. So, teachers use these processes constantly when they're lesson planning, when they're managing routines, and when they're adapting instruction. So, executive function explains how teachers think while they're teaching. The second is professional learning communities, the implementation structure. So, PLC research shows collaboration improves instruction when it includes shared goals, structured dialogue, and accountability. So, PLCs ensure new ideas actually transfer into classroom practice. And last, communities of practice, the learning process. So, COP emphasize that learning through participation and collaboration is key. Novice teachers develop expertise through interaction with colleagues. So it moves from a peripheral participation towards a full professional competence. In Impact EDU, the mentorship and peer collaboration were structured around this model. So COP explains how teachers learn. A key conceptual shift in our project was moving from student intervention to teacher development. We positioned executive function as both a teacher skill and an instructional framework. This means executive function becomes a guide for instructional decision making, a structure for classroom organization, and a driver of professional growth. So instead of teaching strategies first, we focus on strengthening the cognitive systems that make strategies sustainable. So, to make executive function practical, we translated the 5 executive function skills, which were planning, organization, working memory, cognitive flexibility, and self regulation, into 4 observable teaching domains, which were preparation and cognitive readiness, instructional execution, classroom regulation and responsiveness, follow through, and professional closure, which allowed teachers to connect cognitive theory directly into classroom behaviors. For example, we can say planning, then lesson sequencing, or self regulation to classroom responsiveness. For our program design, Impact EDU involved 9 educators at Katz Day School, and the program included 3 workshops, which integrated community of practice and individualized mentoring for the last session. So learning was practice embedded, and the teachers applied ideas immediately in their classrooms. This slide displays our program sessions timeline with the sequence progressed intentionally from session 1, which was executive function introduction and self-assessment, to the second one, which included executive function applied to classroom practice, then on to the third, which was differentiation and peer learning, with the last one being one-on-one mentoring and goal setting. So each of these stages moved teachers from awareness into implementation. Our 4 domains included preparation and cognitive readiness, instructional execution, classroom regulation and responsiveness, and follow through and professional closure. So these domains operationalize executive function into actual observable teaching behaviors, which gave teachers shared language for analyzing and improving their practice.
Impact EDU followed a structured implementation cycle that moved teachers from awareness to application. It began with a self-assessment where teachers identified their own executive functioning strengths and growth areas. Next were the workshops, connecting EF theory directly to classroom practice through the 4 performance domains. We then emphasized collaboration within the community of practice, allowing teachers to problem-solve shared challenges through an EF lens. And it was followed by individual mentoring, where teachers translated ideas into measurable instructional goals. The cycle concluded with reflection and goal setting, reinforcing accountability and sustained implementation. Importantly, participants experienced executive function supports both as learners and as practitioners, modeling the same structure they were encouraged to implement in their classrooms. To evaluate Impact EDU, we designed our study around 3 research questions. First, we examined whether participation in the program was associated with increased use of EF-aligned instructional practices in the classroom. Second, we explored how the community of practice model supported reflection and collaboration among the participants. And third, we assessed participant perceptions of overall program impact, including satisfaction, applicability, and sustained strategy use. Together, these questions allowed us to evaluate both instructional shifts and professional growth, using a mixed methods approach that combined quantitative survey data with qualitative reflection and artifact analysis. 9 educators enrolled in our program. 7 participants completed both the pre and post surveys and formed our matched analytic sample. Participants ranged from first-year teachers to those with over 11 years of experience and represented multiple subject areas. While small, the sample provided meaningful insight into early career instructional development within one school setting. We used a mixed methods design to evaluate the impact of Impact EDU. Quantitatively, we analyzed pre- and post-survey data aligned to validated instruments measuring EF practices, classroom routines, instructional clarity, collaboration, and program satisfaction. Qualitatively, we collected multiple forms of reflective and practice-based data, including reflection journals, growth plans, mentor notes, community of practice discussions, and instructional artifacts such as lesson plans and assignment structures. Importantly, we used triangulation across these multiple data sources. By comparing survey data, reflective and narratives, mentoring documentation, and observable classroom artifacts, we were able to examine whether reported growth aligned with actual instructional shifts. This triangulated approach strengthened the credibility of our findings by ensuring that no single data source stood alone. This slide just summarizes the overall outcomes across our data sources. We observed increased EF-aligned instruction, stronger professional reflection, and high classroom applicability. Importantly, these patterns appeared consistently across surveys, reflections, and classroom artifacts, suggesting meaningful alignment between reported and observed change. So rather than a single result, this slide represents convergence across multiple forms of evidence. This slide addresses our first research question, examining changes in EF-aligned instructional practices. In the graph shown here, we can see small but consistent increases in mean scores from pre to post surveys across several instructional domains. For example, EF practice scores increased from about 4.06 to 4.34, while classroom routines improved roughly 4.36 to 4.57. Although scores were already relatively high at baseline, the upward movement suggests teachers became more consistent in applying EF-aligned strategies rather than learning entirely new ones. These trends align with classroom artifacts and lesson plans, which showed clearer routines, structured directions, and more intentional scaffolding after the program. Our second research question focuses on how participation in the community of practice supported professional growth. In the visual, you see mean scores related to reflection, growth, and collaboration increase from approximately 3.82 pre-program to 4.07 post-program. Post-program ratings of the mentoring and COP experience averaged around 4.21, indicating strong agreement about collaboration and shared problem solving. These increases suggest that teachers engaged more intentionally in reflective practice and goal setting over time. Qualitative feedback supports this trend, with many participants identifying one-on-one mentoring as especially impactful because it helped translate collaborative discussions into actionable classroom goals. Our third research question centered around participants' overall perceptions of the program. As shown in the visuals, satisfaction and perceived impact ratings were consistently high, with an average score of about 4.46 out of 5. This indicates strong agreement that the professional development was well organized and immediately applicable. In addition, classroom culture and engagement measures showed a smaller increase, from roughly 3.64 to 3.85, suggesting modest improvements in classroom experience alongside teacher growth. Together, these results show that participants not only valued the program, but also perceived meaningful changes in their instructional practice. So Impact EDU works because it combines structure through executive function, collaboration through communities of practice, personalization through mentoring, and accountability through PLC principles. This integration suggests mentorship models benefit from cognitive frameworks alongside relational support.
So in terms of discussion, Impact EDU works because it combines structure through executive function, collaboration through communities of practice, personalization through mentoring, and accountability through PLC principles. This integration suggests mentorship models benefit from cognitive frameworks alongside relational support. So this slide also highlights the broader implications of the Impact EDU model beyond this specific implementation. So our findings suggest that executive function can serve as a structured framework for teacher induction and early career professional learning. So rather than focusing only on instructional strategies supporting teachers' cognitive processes like planning, organization and self-regulation may help create more sustainable instructional practices. This result also suggests that mentorship models are most effective when they combine relational support with clear cognitive scaffolds and shared goals. So because the program integrates executive function, committees of practice, and PLC structures, the model has potential to be adapted to other middle schools contexts or embedded within existing professional learning systems. So in terms of limitations, there are several limitations to consider when interpreting these findings. First, the study involved a relatively small sample size with 7 matched data sets used for analysis, which really limited how broadly the results can be generalized. Our project also took place at a single school site over a short implementation period. So in addition, some findings rely on self-reported survey data, which may reflect participant participation rather than objective measurement. So we also did not include direct student outcome data, so conclusions focus primarily on teacher development. And because of these factors, the results should be viewed as exploratory but promising, providing a foundation for future research and longer-term implementation studies. So in conclusion, Impact EDU proposes a theory-driven model that reframes executive function as a central component of teacher development rather than only a student intervention. By combining executive function as a cognitive framework with community of practice and structured mentorship, the program supported teachers in developing more intentional planning, clear instructional routines, and stronger professional reflection. Although the findings were exploratory, they suggest that supporting how teachers think, not just what they do, may lead to more sustainable professional growth. We think overall, Impact EDU offers a replicable approach to teacher induction that integrates cognitive theory, collaboration, and mentorship to support early career educators.